Next up, into the lion's den, of course, it's our one and only Emily Carver. Emily's going to tell us why she thinks the French need to calm down, chill out and get a grip. Let's start the clock.
Well, it looks like that chap's already made my argument for me, but let's just say I'm no fan of Monsieur Macron. But what is going on in France at the moment is beyond ridiculous. I mean, it is absolutely extreme, the riots. You've got widespread arson, you've got rubbish piled high, you've got absolute rampant hooliganism, frankly, and you've also got police brutality. You'd think Macron had forcibly replaced the croissant with the English muffin, the absolute state of it. And worst of all, King Charles III won't even be able to have his gala dinner at the Palace of Versailles. Sacre bleu, sacre bleu. And why? All because Macron wants to raise the pension age by 2 years, from 62 to 64, which, let's remember, is still the lowest out of any major European Union country. So is this really the great disaster? Now, you don't have to be a fan of Macron to know that, you know, the French need to get real. Well, there you go. Dominique, what do you think? You think they should be out rioting?
Well, it's more so the spirit of protest, because the French are known for coming out in droves when there's a policy that they don't like. I mean, we saw that with the fuel tax rises that Macron tried to propose in 2018. And people were out in droves, you know, the Gilets jaunes, that was widespread, and he actually had to row back on that policy. And I think that perhaps we could learn something from the French here. Now, I'm not advocating people commit crime, but I think that for too long in this country, we've just rolled over and let things happen. For example, with the lockdown policies, I think that if people came out and said no, that, you know, we wouldn't have been under such pernicious policies.
I take your point, but if you look at the British welfare state and you think that's looking a bit bloated, I mean, look at France. They're spending 14% of their GDP on public pensions alone. Like, that is a huge amount of money. They need economic reform, and it's going to hurt a bit.
But, Emily, what do you say to the people at home watching tonight who may well be thinking, hang on a minute, Emily, right? I'm 64 myself and I can't retire for a few years yet. They keep putting up the age in this country of when you can actually retire. Many people, Emily, are asking the question, am I going to be working until I drop dead?
Well, that's the question I'm asking myself. We're probably going to have to work till we're into our 70s, well into our 70s. We'll be here in the GBNews studio with our sticks, our walking sticks, with our teeth in a glass next to us, but we'll be here because we're going to have to.
But
the
why
problem
should that be acceptable?
If the French won't accept this, they're going to have to accept a drop in their standard of living. It really is as simple as that. People are living longer, their life expectancy is longer. What do you think, Benjamin?
I mean, look, Emily, I think the West has a fundamental problem with the economies in this way. You know, there's disproportionate number of older people to younger people. Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state as an economy.
Disgusting thing to say.
Benjamin, that is disgusting.
Well, at least then we'd be able to have some jobs. But actually, as much as I'm being tongue-in-cheek, I think there is a serious problem here because, do you know what? Lots of people who go and get university degrees might start their working lives, their proper ones, at 21 or 22, and they might live to 85 or 90 years old. In fact, a third of people born today are expected to have their 100th birthday. So that's what's happening to the world. But if you go from Kensington in London, the richest place in the country, to Kensington in Liverpool, there is more than a 10-year gap in life expectancy. So you have people who are doing manual labour jobs, starting nowadays at 18 years old, exhausted, and they might only have a few years pension. Well, so how is that fair?
Well, this is the thing. A lot of people at home will probably be saying, I mean, write in, please do, will probably be saying, well, hang on, what about if you're doing a manual job? What if you're a labourer? What if you're, you know, using your body and basically can't continue working, Albie?
Look, I think it's a very serious point that we do need to address, the inequalities that we see when people get older. A lot of people in our generation talk about rich pensioners. Well, actually, there are a lot of poor pensioners. So there's an argument to say, actually, the state pension should be higher because it's actually not enough for people to live on. But then equally, the Chancellor has got to balance that with the need to pay for everything else. So it's almost an unsolvable problem.
I read in the Daily Express, which would never lie, 'cause, you know, you write for the Daily Express, a great newspaper.
Thank you, Benjamin.
I read in that by 2024-25, the average income of pensioners will be higher than that of people in their 20s. You know, that kind of thing isn't sustainable. That is not the way round.
But surely this is just what these governments want. They want us to be targeting each other, saying pensioner bad, young person good, and the other way around, when really it's to distract from their own failings. This current economic situation is because of the failings of government all around the world.
No, but...
And everyday people are continually expected to pick up the tab. And if we look at the actual political environment in France right now, yes, Macron won, but why did he win? He won because most of the people that voted for the far left character Mélenchon, actually wanted to stave off the far right. Not that it was a ringing endorsement for Macron. So the reason why you're seeing so many people angry is because really, they have a right to be.
And, Dominique, and I want to put this to Emily, of course, when actually Macron has to do this by presidential decree, like he's some king in medieval times, do you not think people have got a right to be angry about the anti-democratic nature?
Well, that's where I think they do have a right to be angry, because he has, as you say, bypassed Parliament to get this through on some kind of executive order. That is anti-democratic. But what I would say is that he campaigned on this.
Yes.
He was re-elected on this. It was part of his manifesto. People knew he was going to do it. Shame on the French, then, for voting him in if they didn't want this. But the problem is France has for so long needed economic reform, and it seems to be impossible.
Well, again, I would say that I don't think the last election was necessarily a ringing endorsement of Macron. It was because politically the right was gaining momentum, and the right would really emphatically be against these sorts of policies. I mean, for a very long time, Marine Le Pen, when she was leading Front National, they were basically the official opposition in France. So it's no wonder that he's actually had to use undemocratic means to sort of push through these ridiculous policies and ban protests.
Let me just remind everyone once again that it is the lowest pension age of any major European country. Like this, it's not like they're trying to raise it to 75. This is actually quite a small reform.
Honestly.
But in France, it's treated as if it's the worst thing in the world.
The way they go on, you think they've replaced the croissant with an English muffin. I mean, you know, the French protest too much. I think some protesters good.
Benjamin, for the delight of our viewers, I'm going to have to cut you off. It's been an absolutely fantastic show. Thank you very much for joining us.